The moon is a harsh mistress, a military base, a computer. From Groom Lake, the armed forces send up commuters. Lunar particle beams cause floods, quakes, droughts. Weather control is population control. Have you figured that out? It should be front page in the space age. At this date, somebody gotta rattle your cage.
Good evening, colleagues, across town and across the world. It is the 15th of April in the year of our Lord 2021, where I am, and I am Paul Colby, your host for another installment of Manic Crazy News here on Public Affairs, Public Access. I am coming to you tonight with wisdom aforethought, with plenty of good news, with lots of inside information. And the reason I am so endowed with these important assets is because I brought some crack investigators with me. I am referring to three people who have been working for me for God knows how long, because I've forgotten. But Gesticulation is here, and Elaine Changer is here, and Bobby is here. You all know Bobby Penn. So let me start with Bobby. Hi, Bob. You know, it's been a while since we've worked together, but Bobby Penn is and was a consultant to the tiny helicopter feasibility project at Oak Slate University. Before that, and he developed the Wound Me With Your Words app that is so popular with high school students in the USA and Canada. And he operates, I don't know if he actually has it, but he operates a 250-acre squirrel ranch in Petaluma, California. He's also the author of a New York Times bestseller, Bombast as an Art Form. Bob, well, I should call you Bobby because that's what everybody else calls you. I am curious, you have a 250-acre farm for squirrels, but that sounds pretty large for a squirrel population.
Well, boss, I actually have both beaver and squirrels. It's about 75% beaver, 25% squirrels, but because Petaluma is so close to the Diablo Canyon nuclear plant, they're actually mutated squirrels and mutated beavers from all the radiation exposure. So the squirrels are actually 80 pounds roughly a piece. And the beavers, interestingly enough, are normal size, but they're just very angry beavers.
They get along, I guess.
Well, they have a truce because the beavers are very angry, but the squirrels are so large that they intimidate the beavers. So but it can be tough to keep the two separated at times, I must admit.
Well, on a future show, if I bring you back as Bobby Penn, I'm sure we'd like to see some video of what goes on at the ranch because.
Well, I'm actually under there's an agreement with the Petaluma police that I'm not allowed to actually show any videotape of what really goes on at the ranch, if you know what I mean.
Oh, well, that's happening a lot in the news these days, where I guess you have body cameras where you're actually closer to the squirrels and the beavers than they would prefer you be.
Yes, and you let me tell you, you get close to one of those angry beavers, you're going to pay for it.
Okay, and I guess you pay. Well, we'll get to that later because I know your finances are a subject we don't often cover here on television. But I got it under control.
With good reason, sir. Thank you for that.
Yeah. I want to introduce you, if you haven't met her before, to Elaine Changer. Now, Elaine is the inventor of the cordless bathrobe and the multilingual dishwasher. And so for that reason, I think her practically every day. I mean, I've got a cordless bathrobe. I haven't had to plug in for years. She was a costume designer for the very successful Broadway musical Crot Pots and Bowling Shoes. I've been there 4 times, but to see it. I mean, not to go backstage. And she has long been regarded as the spiritual leader of the broken-hearted accountants collective in upstate New York, where there are a lot of broken-hearted accountants. That's right, isn't it, Elaine?
Mm-hmm. This is true.
You also are famous right now for she's the author of a Pulitzer Prize-winning volume, I Never Said I Could Drive. But Elaine, I understand that over the years, even though you don't drive, you're still thinking about it.
Yes, and thanks, boss. It's a pleasure to be here. I do still think about it often. In fact, several years ago, I bought a wonderful car, dream car, recently paid it off, have never driven it, had my neighbor drive it to the car wash to get detailed a few times. I will tell you this much. I have saved a tremendous amount on car insurance by just not driving at all. I've put 3 miles on the car in the past 6 years, so it's really a win-win.
I understand you invested a lot of that money you saved in Nike and Goodyear this year when Donald Trump was telling people to boycott them.
Oh, yes. Yes.
So you've gone to the cleaners lately, or I should say the dishwashers lately. I don't know.
Oh, perfect. Thank you. Got you. You got me there.
We have another crack investigator with us tonight, and that is Mr. Gesticulation. He is a host of a popular talk show. I'm sure a lot of you listen to him every day. Enemies of the People Speak Out. He's the equestrian professor of ancient salad dressage at MIT. He's also a trusted advisor, or was, to several presidents who prefer to remain anonymous and or have requested roadside assistance. He's the author of a tell-all book that has everybody talking, Murder Holes, What Medieval Times Gets Wrong About Dinner. But he is also, that's not the, I mean, this guy writes a lot. So he also has a bestseller called Sawdust in My Boots. Jess, I have been wondering, for a guy who has so many opinions about so many things, I understand you don't get out of the house all that much, but I could swear I have seen either pictures or video of you somewhere near the nation's capital in fairly recent times. Do I have that right?
Well, you know, my network of basement warriors and we do believe in keeping it real when it comes to the government of this nation. So we want to make sure that we are prepared for any time that there is an opportunity to lay siege to those who oppress us.
You're not naming names when you say that. I guess you're just...
No, I can name handles for you. It's Lancelot and Fuzzy Bear are my two main ride or die caballos.
All right. I don't think we want to go further here without talking to, certain intelligence agencies. Anyway, tonight, my colleagues and I are going to we're basically we'll cover current events, but we're going to focus in 2 areas. 1, names in the news, and 2, pretty interesting things that you may have heard about, but you probably got the story wrong because, frankly, if you're not listening to us, you're not getting the real story. So let's start at the top with people in the news. And so we're going to talk about royalty. We're going to talk about Mr. Matt Gaetz, who's been making some headlines lately. We're going to talk about some people that you don't know who are on various sugar daddy websites. We're going to talk about the people who are auditioning to be Rush Limbaugh's replacement. And we're going to talk about maybe 500 million people like me and my colleagues who've had our search data breached. And maybe if we get to it, we'll talk about some Republicans visiting Mar-a-Lago just recently. And then we're going to talk about recent events. By that, I mean spring break in Florida. I mean what's getting stuck in the Suez Canal, and how people are trying to suppress the vote, and what the president, former president, thinks about Major League Baseball and other sporting ensembles that want to support voters. And if we get a little chance, we'll talk about what's going on in the economy. There you have it, all laid out. If we don't get to it, I at least tried to tell you what we were going to do. So let's start at the top with the royals. I mean the wayward royals. I mean Harry and Meghan. They seem to have put themselves outside the ambit of the royal family, given what we know about the duties and the public demeanor of the royal family. Let's talk about Harry first. Harry has recently said that he just doesn't like being a royal because you've got to smile no matter what happens. I think we have a slide picturing Harry in a most unfortunate pose lately. I mean, this boy has been bitten by any number of wild animals while he's out representing the crown. He's also had jukeboxes thrown at him. I think he was seriously injured, etc. So he doesn't like being a royal. He'd rather be an LA dude because, the nightlife, I guess, is a lot better. His wife, Meghan, she is kind of an entrepreneur at heart. I've got a slide here. I think you can see that she had a taco truck. She wanted to put it out in LA first and then spread it around the country. You know what's weird about this? Well, the royal family tried to stop her for one thing. They said, that's not what we royals do. But the attraction for me, even though these people, Harry and Meghan, are very attuned to environmental issues and animal rights issues and so forth, the tacos there are created with otter meat. I don't know if you've had otter. Well, anyway, let me just leave it right there.
I haven't, but perhaps I oughter.
I think you should. I mean, it's just like driving. It's driving a point home.
It's been a long year. It's been a long year.
I should say that, because I have the ranch with beaver, that I prefer, I think beaver is a much more nutritious meal than otter. So I'll just throw that in there as a shameless plug for my ranch.
Okay, let's just call that a shameless plug for your ranch.
If you have to choose between a beaver and eating an otter, you want to go with the beaver.
All right.
Well, the surface texture is really preferable. You just you lick the outside, but the meat just, I don't know, unless it's prepared right, it's not.
Beaver is far more tasty when you eat it. So.
Okay. I didn't mean to take it that far, but okay. The other complaint, of course, from Harry, that got so much publicity after their interview with Oprah, he said that William was trapped, his brother William, and we even have a picture. There was a TV show that was going to air. It's been taken off the air now. We know where William was actually being trapped, and that place looks so small. I don't think there's even room for Kate unless she's going to sit in his lap. And you know how that, anyway, the boys, some people were saying the boys could perhaps reconcile when they go back to London because they're going to have a statue of their mom Diana's legacy. Now, I don't know what a statue of a legacy is supposed to look like, but also since Prince Philip has passed away, maybe they'll get back together, or maybe they'll just keep arguing about who Grandpa liked best. Who can tell you? Anyway, the biggest name in news these days is Matt Gaetz. And when Matt Gaetz first hit the news, people were talking about water gates. You get it? I mean, people are always talking about new gates. But when he was interviewed by Mother Tucker Carlson on Fox News, I mean, Carlson probably was close to melting down. We have a picture of what it looked like when they were talking. Boy, that was brutal. Anyway, the narrative changed from water gates to pizza gates, and this was basically because of a story in the news. This story, it appeared in the Squalid Revelations Digest, and then it quickly went all over the place. It was a story about travels with Matt Gaetz and 17-year-old girls. I guess that's a reference to infants. In any case, Bobby, you were telling me that you had a question about whether they were.
Yeah, my sources are telling me it's not been determined. He's traveled interstate travel with a miner, but it's not clear whether it was a coal miner or a gold miner. So a gold miner carries a far more harsh penalty and will get the attention of the FBI far quicker than crossing state lines with a coal miner.
Well, speaking of crossing state lines, one of my other investigators who's not here tonight gave me this insight. It looks like Gaetz may have been set up, and I'll tell you why. You've heard of these self-driving vehicles? It looks like he was in Kansas City, and he was in the back seat with, she was just 17, if you know what I mean, and he was saying, well, I don't have to drive because I'm back here doing and I'm renting this self-driving vehicle. Well, the self-driving vehicle went from Kansas City in Kansas to Kansas City, Missouri. And so you know what that means? He crossed state lines. So that sounds like the boy is being set up. But after people started talking about him being set up, he tried to change the narrative. That's something you hear about in politics these days, changing the narrative. And he said that his dad, Bill Gaetz, who I think all of you know, he said Bill Gaetz was wired throughout the Trump presidency. Elaine, you were pretty wired too, weren't you?
You know, boss, I find this whole discussion pretty hard to take. For a long time, I was a closet Gaetz supporter, but I think at this point, I just got to leave them where they are.
Oh, what I've heard is he's basing his alibi on the fact that because both Kansas City, Missouri, and Kansas City, Kansas have the state name, it just wasn't fair because he doesn't understand how two cities in two different states can have the same name. So it's just been a trumped up persecution in his mind.
Well, see, I've heard he's also been sending nude photos to colleagues, and there was some confusion about that because initially it was, were they nude photos of someone else? Were they nude photos of him? And one of my closest sources tells me they were actually nude photos of Mitch
well, yeah, we have that original story, don't we? But I didn't realize it was Mitch.
Mitch.
Yeah. I can see how that
a member
would
of the
have,
Senate, a high-ranking member of the Senate. Let's just say that.
I can see how that would have turned off a Swedish diplomat, or I mean, any of the distaff members on the. Well, anyway,
And possibly a Swedish masseuse as well, I'm told. But okay,
a young.
Let's move.
Well, we don't know. Most of the Swedish masseuses were actually at the time were in Deshaun Watson's apartment, so he really was going to have trouble finding a young Swedish masseuse.
Except for the ones that are mechanics that build the Volvo engines and things like. Well, anyway, look, the next element of the story, even if we accept what's just been said, and I'm dubious, was that Gaetz was paying for sex with Greenburgers. And that story was covered in the Orlando Hot Button, but Green Burgers seems to be a reference to Joel Greenberg, who is one of the guys who was he was using a lot of people's false identification for purposes of his own, et cetera, et cetera. You know, when I started looking at this story, what I was really interested in, because we heard mention of sugar daddy websites, I was curious to know what goes on those sites these days, because I never look at them. Bobby, I understand you look at them periodically, but just for academic.
Just strictly for research purposes. Yeah.
Research purposes. But look, I've got you some. These came from Jess. I'm not sure why he was able to download these, but he did. See this first post, and by the way, on this website, you see they're not really sugar daddies anymore because there's hardly any sugar. So instead, they're high fructose corn syrup daddies. But don't let that confuse you. Look at this one from Lola. Here she says she's interested in sexual congress with a Congress person. That's interesting. She wants somebody unvaccinated, and I guess, Jess, you know a lot more about that than we do. And she prefers chest hair. I guess that's typical. Look at this next one here. This is from Mary Beth. And Mary Beth is from somewhere in Texas. The thing about this one that interested me, she says that she can't really have sex. She can pretend to be your sexual partner, but she's really still a virgin. I think she might have meant virgin, but I don't know the hip lingo these days. I mean, maybe people are a virgin on TikTok or something. This is my version. This one from Audrey. Next slide. She says she prefers someone bi. I think she means bilingual, not bisexual, because she's talking here about speaking broken Russian, and I don't really understand why somebody seems to have redacted part of her. Well, I don't understand it. There are also men on these high fructose corn syrup daddy websites. For example, Frank here, this next slide, Frank says he's very successful as a bamboo importer, and he's really into bathroom humor and scapegoating, aren't we all, and outdoor sex. So anyway,
where did you get that from, Frank? Because it's been edited as he's really not a bamboo importer. When I wrote it, never mind. Sorry.
I was curious about that because there are very few successful bamboo importers anymore. I mean, there are a lot of
it turns out you can import. Imported bamboo is also it's a suitable food for angry beavers. So
Jess, are you wearing any imported bamboo this evening, or is that all really chain mail?
It's actually bamboo is quite useful for posture correction. It's the only way I can keep my head up when I wear these long interviews. So yes, I have various poles taped all over myself at the moment, and they tend to be organically, locally farmed, cage-free bamboo.
Okay, I think I get it. One other thing here, while we're talking about names in the news, Rush Limbaugh is pretty no longer among the living, if you understand my gist. And the Republicans and the far right, I don't know if you want to split hairs and call them different species. Anyway, they're looking for a replacement. The biggest name so far to come audition is that Mr. Pillow guy. Anyway, he says God called him to audition. Elaine, were you monitoring his phone calls when he said that?
Well, yes, I was, and in fact, it was not God. It was Julia Louis-Dreyfus, and he was very confused, and she was calling to tell him to stop texting and calling her, and the whole thing was just a big mess. And now she's trying to sue him, and it's just the whole thing.
That explains a lot, because lately, the last few days, Jim Jordan is being named as the next Rush Limbaugh, and he's sort of like Ted Cruz without the beard.
My sources,
Bobby,
my sources actually say it's surprisingly the leading candidates to replace him are actually the Olsen twins, because they're looking to make a media comeback, and they're thinking this is a first step that they can, and plus they have the advantage of they can split responsibilities and no one will be able to tell which one is actually on camera, so they only have to work.
I was going to say, just one at a time. It's about as much as America can handle, as we've ever been able to handle.
Okay, you guys are.
If we can handle Ted Cruz in the news, I'm pretty confident we can handle.
I know more than one of you have been on the committee to study Ted Cruz, but I guess it got disbanded after a while because there was too much there, or there wasn't anything there to study.
It was pretty simple. We stationed Elaine on one side and I was on the other side, and I shot my flashlight into his ear, and then Elaine was able to see it coming out the other side. So
yeah, I was blinded, and that's when I had to quit.
Yeah.
Okay, I guess that's why Jim Jordan never goes to the bathroom when we see him on TV. But anyway,
he generally only goes to the bathroom if it's in a gym, is what my sources tell me. So.
All right, well, we'll get back to that, because we're going to talk about the filibuster when we talk about current events. But let me mention another group. While we're talking about names in the news, this is it's not a person, it's a group. It's 500 million people whose Facebook data was breached, and that includes yours truly. And I really don't like to share a lot of personal information, but in this case, I almost have to show you how this works. If you have been confused about why you get certain emails or certain offers on your Facebook feed, this might explain it for you. So here's some of my search history. It's not all of it, and some of it, some of it's a little embarrassing. I have to explain this. When I was looking for shampoo for virgins, I have a couple of dogs who've never mated, and I needed to know what kind of and then when I looked for the Etruscan Dynamo on drugs, this was a hip hop artist had called me asking if I would represent him. So I was trying to do a background check.
Hold on. Sorry, boss. Before you leave that subject, I got to just put this out there. My dad was once exposed. All right. He went to a Halloween party dressed as a back half of a Hereford bull. As soon as he tucked his head, though, behind Uncle Louie's hips, he realized he'd forgotten his own pants. So the only thing he had on was his chaps. Man, he was so embarrassed. His neighbors milked that mistake the rest of the night.
Yeah, boss, I've also had some fairly recent experience with illegal exposure. And so what I find is what's worked for me is when they filed the restraining order, that pretty much put a stop to it on my end, at least. I didn't want to really face the jail time. So,
if I could just get back to the main topic, I mean that was very illuminating from both of you, and
I've seen Bobby on my app. I've seen him there. We're in the same portal.
Okay. That's why they call him equestrian. It's sort of like an Etruscan. But I was explaining Etruscan. Here's what I got mailed to me. You've seen some of my search history. Well, I received this offer from some hardware store that I could buy the parts and build my own Etruscan monument in my backyard. And I said to myself, well, I didn't get it. I also got this recipe for how to make an Etruscan concrete biscuit. Well, this is all because of stuff I searched for. As far as I know, the only thing all of us have searched for, that we have in common, we've probably done a search about Matt Gaetz. We've probably done a search about Mitch McConnell and wait a minute, just a minute. My phone seems to be.
My phone. I've been getting. I apologize. This is so unprofessional. I've been getting so many notifications. I just want to make sure this is not some sort of emergency.
Let me check mine too. This guy doesn't have any clothes on.
Okay. So the devices are in fact listening to us in real time because that was a nude photo of Mitch McConnell, and
I think I'm going to become an independent.
The frown goes all the way to his navel. I can't. I'm gonna need a minute here. Siri, this
I need
this
to
is
delete
a violation
a
of the Geneva Convention. This is
some things are not really allowed. But well, anyway, that's what search histories will do. This explains why you get certain things in the mail or in your Facebook feed.
Excuse me.
That's all right, Elaine. I already deleted.
I got the same thing, Elaine, and I'm going to be in therapy.
I've already deleted.
How do you delete it without having to look at it again?
Just switch to one of the different versions of Facebook that the teenagers use. Those things vanish after you see them the first time.
I find you have to go in there physically to carve it out.
Well, Jess, I'm sure that will be helpful to someone out there who is not as technically minded as you or Bobby.
Right.
You both worked under the engine. I know that. Before we leave,
modern savvy.
Yeah. Before we leave this subject of what are we talking? Of names in the news. Yeah, let me get my breath here.
That was a traumatizing experience, boss.
I'm sorry that happened while we were live on TV.
I'm proud of you for able to keep it together, and Elaine, I'm equally as proud of you.
Double in therapy this week. I feel for my therapist. I really
okay, let's try to get past this, folks.
Oh yes, let's please.
Yes.
Okay, another group in the name. Now we're going to groups instead of individuals. 7 Republican senators visited Mar-a-Lago this week. I'm talking about Lindsey Graham and Tom Cotton, Ron Johnson, Marco Rubio, Rick Scott, these guys, and Dames and Young. Anyway, 7 Republican senators showed up at Donald Trump's new headquarters. So most people think, and with good reason, I suppose, they think Well, these guys must be scheming something about the 2022 elections. And that would be a reasonable posture. But we know what was really going on, don't we? Oh, if y'all don't know, I'll tell you. I thought one of you would know. They are going to make a remake of Ocean's 11. But so far, the working title is Trump 7 because they haven't been able to round up 11 people who want to do it. But that's what they're working on.
Well, they can, if they want to expand it to the House, they'll be able to get Gaetz, and then he, of course, can recruit his friend Greenberg and several attractive young women.
And Mr. Jim Jordan.
Yeah.
But we'll get to sports in just a minute. Let's talk about interesting recent events, okay, for a little change of pace. First thing I want to tell you is there was a spring break in Florida this year, as always, but it was different. You want to take a look at this slide we have? This is from the Joe College news boat, which I understand to be this is a periodical that comes out during the spring break. This year, thousands of college people showed up in Miami Beach as usual, but they showed up for mass vaccination and a mass prayer service.
Well,
so you see, you've lost your faith in the next generation. Well, I haven't. But
I've heard the turnout was spurred by a lot of people. It was mistyped, and they thought it was a mass Vaticanization. So they thought it was a takeover by the Vatican of the U.S. Capitol, and so that drew a lot of. Roman
I heard they
Catholic
were
priests.
selling off everything in the Vatican museum to. I mean, they have to pay. All of these lawsuits with the defrocked priests. They need to raise some money to pay off these settlements. Well, anyway.
Well, that is true. Although they're having a little trouble with the eBay app. It doesn't seem to work very well. They don't have good Wi-Fi connection in the Vatican, is my understanding. So they're having real trouble with eBay and trying to get a good picture of a priceless artifact on eBay is a bit of a challenge as well.
Okay.
Now, Bobby, I heard about that invasion, but I didn't hear anything about any. It was a mass vacation. I didn't hear the mass vaccination, but something about the Pope. What? I didn't see no Pope mobile when I was in any of these recent events in the politics. So,
well, he's the Pope's a very stealthy member of the deep state, so he won't.
Oh yeah, I've heard of the Pope Ninja. It's a phenomenon down in Florida, but I didn't know he actually was in effect.
Well, I've seen a lot of polls lately about what the population thinks. You know, the entire population. And
he's very popular.
Yeah, it's popular opposites. Anyway, let me talk for a minute about education. There are a couple of interesting things going on in the world of, or if you want, or the arena of education. One thing is that in Alabama, the Senate is currently debating whether it's okay to have students learn yoga. And as you can see from the slide here, certain people in the Senate are calling it a dangerous Hindu scam.
See, now, boss, I heard that it was they did not want students to have yogurt after Michelle Obama's Healthy Foods Initiative. They're still kind of railing against that. So,
maybe there was a typo in that story. I'm sorry to put that on the screen. I must have made a mistake there. Because
is it all flavors of yogurt, Elaine, or is it just the berry flavor?
I believe everything but the Go-Gurt, as that has enough high fructose corn syrup in it to meet standards for the state.
Okay, well, education in Texas is another subject. In Texas, there was some stimulus that was intended to be spent on high schools, but my understanding, and y'all correct me if I'm wrong, the governor decided that instead it should be spent on golden parachutes for those guys from the Public Utilities Commission, ERCOT.
I've heard the same, boss, but it's not a done deal yet. There's still a push back to use the stimulus money as like a 10%. Take the entire check will be a 10% down payment on your recent electric bills after the freeze. So there is some back and forth on the whether it's going to ERCOT or it still might get to the consumers to help them pay, which of course gets into the ERCOT's board of directors' pocket one way or the other. So
is ERCOT similar to yogurt in that respect, Elaine?
I've had ERCOTs. They're delicious. They're sort of like a cross between an apricot and I'm not really sure what. Never had them with yogurt, especially not, high fructose corn syrup yogurt. I try to eat healthy, but I imagine there's probably some correlation.
I've heard they're especially good. ERCOTs and Go-Gurt is especially good with otter meat. So it'd be
I was just going to ask Jess about that because I think
when I was in Florida, my team and I, we went to ERCOT Center, and so we understood, we saw the movements of the future. It was a good balance with us representing the past.
Well, that's fascinating. I mean, maybe there's another word for it, but let's just use that for now.
Yeah,
there was a big container ship stuck in the Suez Canal. I bet a lot of you noticed that. I mean, because it's pretty big. Now, when this big container ship was first noted to be stuck in the Suez Canal, a lot of people looked at the writing on the side, which said Evergreen. And even though that's just the name of the Japanese company that owns the big ship, but it appealed to a lot of Republicans who are looking for a slogan to use to voice their opposition to the Green New Deal. So as you can see from the slide here, they are adopting the slogan Never Green. And in fact, some of these people, including Matt Gaetz, are wearing these little Never Green pins right there on their suits to show what side something about buttering the bread. I forget how that goes.
Listen, we need to get back to brass tacks on this issue, all right? Y'all need to understand what it takes to get something this big moving, all right? You can't go in there with your suppository notions. When you got something blocked up like this, you got maximum tonnage jammed in there, and you got to get, then you got the protected species in the area, and you need the right tool in hand. And it's going to take multiple passes.
Okay, that point well taken. Okay,
that's always the point.
And Jess, of course, has a wide experience with all kinds of different tools. So I think he's probably the expert on this.
He probably is, but I've got to speed this up. We have too much more to talk about here. The real name of this ship, by the way, was the Ever Gibbon, named after a popular species of a relative to the human form. And when this Ever Gibbon was stuck in the Suez Canal, there was a lot of false reporting about what was actually on the ship. You see this article in the Wyoming Router? It's talking about a global supply of shoe polish that's evaporating in the Suez Canal. Now, first of all, I didn't know shoe polish evaporated, but secondly, that's not really what was on the container ship. You know, we always have prime intelligence that we present on this show. And I'll tell you what we have here, a picture from the Office of Satellite Intelligence. This is a top secret document. In fact, I've never seen a document exactly like this. If you look up there in the top right, it even says, eyes only, this document does not exist. That's how secret this document is, but it shows you what was on that container ship, including a bunch of $19 violins. I think those were going to somewhere. Elaine, you told me they're going to Denmark or Finland or something. Yeah.
Yes.
Not
yes.
because Americans don't need $19 violins. We already have Facebook and Instagram. Well, and some otter food, a lot of otter food, some bat repellent, some Trump Industries lie detector, a lot of stuff that is pretty important to our economy, okay? But of course, even though that ship eventually got freed up, and we showed you the parting of the waters, I think it was maybe Joel Osteen or Jim Jordan or somebody implored their God to part the waters, because as Jess says, you can't just use a little tug anyway.
Well, there was also, my sources tell me, at least part of it, there was a few containers of slinkies. And what happened is the ship got to rolling, and the slinkies started slinking, as slinkies will do. And they got into some sort of natural frequency where the vibration and the slinkiness actually turned the ship by the right-hand rule of torque.
Well, thanks as always, Bobby, for that.
Quite a torquey contribution.
What he said. Anyway, there's always a conspiracy theory, so we checked in with the Roswell Reviewer to see what they were saying, and they said it was a giant UFO. What isn't, these days? But look at this next slide. When things were stuck in the canal, then there were a lot of stories about other things that were stuck just because Americans have been, a lot of people have been stuck at home for a long time just eating and forgetting how to do anything else. There was a story in the Arizona Acrobat about people getting stuck in revolving doors. They couldn't remember exactly how to use them anymore.
And to be honest, boss, I forgot a lot of things after being in lockdown for a month. I forgot how to use a doorknob. I stared at it. I missed so many grocery deliveries. You wouldn't believe it. Finally, just ripped the thing off. And now I have forgotten to. I was looking for an app, honestly, on my phone to see if I could open the door with that. The whole smart home thing did not work. Door would not open. Terrible.
All right.
And listen, I'm not a fan of revolving doors anyway. So anything that's easily converted into an observation tank. So all the government has to do is hit a button and the door stops moving, and then you're stuck, right? Then the filter drops in, then the little castle. And then from there, your only hope for dinner is to nibble the flakes at the surface. I tell you, it's more than once I've been designated an anemone of the people.
Now, Jess, does that chainmail, does that weigh you down when you're in an amphibious situation? I'm curious about that.
Constantly. It's hard to wave at your friends when you only got a few digits above the surface, You got to wait for that hand. So I don't even think that when Arthur received the sword, I don't think that was the goddess in the lake. I think that was a woman drowning, and the only thing she could do is to reach out, and they missed the ball on that one. You got a dead goddess in a Scottish loch, and that's all about, that's where you get the history of the Britain.
Fascinating.
Boy, we're learning a lot tonight without even trying to. So, and speaking of trying to, did you hear that there's a newly discovered ancient city in Egypt, about 3,000 years old? I don't remember what the name is, but you probably saw. You may have seen something in the archaeological journals about it. The thing that's interesting to me is that this ancient city apparently had a version of cable TV, and they also had a version of voter suppression, which leads us to our next story, voter suppression. Look here at this story in the Reno Ball Handler. Republicans are trying everything they can do legally, I mean, by making laws to suppress the vote. And that includes things like rules about push-ups. This has turned out to be bad for Republicans because when they said 50 push-ups to qualify to vote, most Republicans couldn't do 50 push-ups. They also talked about no drugs, but most adults in America, Republican or conservative or Democratic or liberal or progressive, almost all of them are taking some kind of prescription drugs, so that didn't work. And they also tried to allow voting only for people who knew the lyrics to Taylor Swift's songs. There was some other reason that
my boss, my sources tell me that they did consider that, in fact, but because the only people in the U.S. that know the Taylor Swift's lyrics are her ex-boyfriends, and they turned out to be all Democrats, so the Republicans.
Oh, okay, that explains it.
I was informed that there was possibly another one, strip searches, the kind that, we are all subjected to at the airport, or is that just me?
Strip searches. Well, I've heard something about.
Was it strip searches or stripper poles?
Stripper poles, yes.
Stripper poles, Elaine. You had to show that you were proficient at the use of a stripper pole.
Well, because that makes me think about it, because I don't mind standing in line, all this talk. I mean, listen, we just got to make it lucrative. They make you stand around. I said, make it entertaining. All right. I'm fine with a poll tax. If it means 6 hours of twerking for democracy allows Candy or Genevieve to buy their kid a laptop.
Okay.
Interesting.
So those are some of the things being done to suppress. In Texas, our voting law is a little different than Georgia's, the way that it's being reimagined. In Texas, we're going to have drive-ins open on voting days, but this is not like we had in Harris County where you could drive through and cast your vote. Instead, thanks to Governor Abbott and his initiative, there will be some new drive-ins built, but they will only be open on voting days. And the hope is you can lure a bunch of people to the drive-in instead of the drive-through. They'll do anything to stop the vote. That's why we have, on the one hand, we have the Republicans trying to suppress. We have the Democrats saying, for the people. And if you look at the text of that H.R. 1, for the people, it's saying that every sentient being should be able to participate in the voting process. We have a slide showing that language. And the thing is, a lot of Republicans are saying, well, that obviously applies to Ted Cruz, so that's okay. But they're a little worried that it might apply to all of them. So now the debate that is swirling is about what is a sentient being, and is it a one-celled animal, for example? Is that is it sentient? Well, I don't know the answer to that, but the El Paso Annunciator did an article on it recently. They don't know either. Let me mention that Trump has been involved in all of this discussion of voting. When he heard that Major League Baseball was going to move the All-Star game because of this voter suppression barrage, he said, "It's me or the national pastime, baby." And a lot of people said, well, that makes it clear. So after he said that, Trump being a transactional sort of a guy, he realized that maybe there's money in going along with moving the All-Star game from Atlanta. And so you saw this report here in the Seminole County Spiel about Trump building a new stadium in the Florida swamp. How about that?
And boss, my sources tell me that plan is going forward, and our ex-president is claiming that Mexico will actually pay for the stadium.
Now, Bobby, I need to jump in and contradict you there. I was told that what they will be paying for is a 3,000-mile golf course along the border instead.
And will it allow the Trump rules whereby you can throw the ball out of the sand trap and kick it out of the woods?
I believe that's still in the planning stages, but I would imagine so.
Let me just mention a few things because we're running out of time here. In the immediate future, we're going to see a movement for a vaccine scorecard. That'll say whether you've been vaccinated or not. We'll see some stuff about the infrastructure bill and how you get it passed through Congress, since it has all this money for otter food and violin classes and so forth. But it can't really pass because of the filibuster unless we change how the filibuster works. And so, that might include things like saying you have to keep talking, you can't use your cell phone, you can't take a bathroom break, you've got to speak in complete sentences, you have to change your socks periodically, you can't carry weapons onto the floor of the Senate. Those are the kind of
what I'm seeing, boss, is my sources tell me we don't know quite why they want to outlaw filibusters, because you have to break in both stallions and mayors. So I don't understand what all this consternation about filibusters, but I don't know what our other crack investigators think about the filibuster.
Pardon me, boss. I feel like that list of rules, the no phones, no bathroom breaks, etc. Can't change your socks. I think that would actually give advantage.
I think the only way we can really demonstrate what it should be like is if we all talk about what we want to talk about. You keep talking about what you want to say. For example, I want to talk about how never pick up a piece of paper or maybe read the news and then go to a part of the world where they can't be recognized as an intruder. And then what they do is they say, this is who I go for. This is who is on the ballot. Here there are laws about truncating democracy. I don't care if there are things that we say in public. I'm going to say all of them, and I'm going to say them repeatedly. I'm going to say them because I like to say them. I don't.